Tensions are really high in Canada, almost higher than they have ever been, with the war just continuously escalating day after day, and with the just complete incompetence and mismanagement here domestically in Canada from our own Liberal government. You have people across the board that are pissed, and the only party that seems to stand up to this nonsense is the Conservative Party of Canada. If the NDP truly cared about Canada, they would end their coalition and we would be gearing up for an election. But you're not seeing that. And so it's just very hypocritical that the NDP or anyone from the NDP is going around saying, hey, it's the Conservatives' problem and the Liberal problem. No, NDP, it's not. It's you guys. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Today we're taking a look at question period highlights and how Pierre, as well as pretty much every single minister from his cabinet, unleash total and utter hell in the House of Commons. You're going to want to sit back. You're going to want to stick around for the entire video and watch it, because you got some A stars at the beginning and you got A stars at the end, such as Larry Brock is at the end. And we're going to start off with Melissa Lansman. But before we do, I want to encourage you to give a like and subscribe if you haven't yet already. It really helps grow the channel. And without further ado, here we go.
Imagine having lunch in a Jewish-owned business in downtown Toronto only to be shouted at because you're Jewish. Imagine being harassed outside your children's school where you've been told that they would be safe as they are escorted in by uniformed police officers. Imagine being told you shouldn't come to the office on a Monday morning, or maybe it would be wise to take off the religious identifier that was meant to signify your faith off your front door because it would make you a target. You don't have to imagine it. It's all happening here, and it's further fueled by the irresponsible statements pushed by the Prime Minister, who 6 days after repeating Hamas's talking points hasn't corrected the record. Imagine being terrified in your own community and having a Prime Minister who hasn't said a word about it. Quite the opposite. He took the word of a terrorist organization over his own militaries and
Yikes.
still hasn't retracted his statement.
Yeah, man, Trudeau's got quite a few apologies to make. He's kind of starting a civil war.
Questions orales.
Oral questions. Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
The opposition.
Here we go, everybody.
After 8 years of this Prime Minister, housing has doubled in cost, and now CMHC has said that there has been a 63% increase in the number of Canadians that use alternative loans. They pay up to 15% in interest for these alternative mortgages. Will the Prime Minister finally change his inflationary ways so that the Bank of Canada can reduce interest rates so that Canadians can keep their houses? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My colleague across the way claims that he and his party want to march towards prosperity, but that would be through austerity. Canadians know that all the Conservatives represent is to chop things up. Chop, 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 Mr. Speaker. Chopping funding for small craft ports, chopping in various programs that our communities need. The Conservative Party is like being a shark that claims to be vegetarian. They're not credible at all. They are not worth the risk, Mr. Speaker.
Drop some Apple emojis in the chat.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians are already living through austerity. They have to chop, chop, chop their own personal budgets, groceries, gas, and now their homes. There's now a new phenomenon. Seniors, middle-class seniors, find themselves homeless after the doubling of housing costs. A man in Calgary saw a $1,600 increase in his housing costs, and now he cannot find a place to rent. Will the government finally change its mind so we can reduce interest rates so that our seniors can keep a roof over their heads? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was saying, Mr. Speaker,
She's like the 13th Liberal in line. Why is she answering questions?
They seem to have a cracked crystal ball. They want to cut everywhere.
Oh my God, chat's blowing up with
They're
apples.
even cutting into their crystal balls now. They have no plan. They have no vision, Mr. Speaker.
Holy shit.
Please ask them to fix their crystal balls so that they can better see in the future.
Drop some apples in the chat, everybody.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Years, this Prime Minister is not worth the cost of housing, which has doubled. Now we see that there's been a 63% increase in the number of Canadians who are going to alternative lenders to get mortgages because they can no longer get approved by the main banks. That means interest rates as high as 15% per year. We haven't seen those types of rates since the last Trudeau was in power. Will the Prime Minister reverse inflationary spending in the upcoming fall economic update so we can bring down interest rates and our Canadian people can keep their homes?
Taking a shot at Papa Trudeau.
Mr. Speaker, it's important that you understand that the honourable member's plan to actually have more homes built seems to be to cut funding to build those homes. I was in Brampton last week where we announced $114 million that's going to help Brampton build more than 24,000 homes over the next decade. He plans to cut it. When it comes to getting more homes built, we're removing the GST on new apartments in this country. He plans to put it back on. Mr. Speaker, we're going to continue to make the investments necessary. We agree that there are people struggling. The difference between us is we have a problem a solution to the problem.
Did you find the 1 million people that went missing under your watch, everybody?
Absolutely right that he has a problem that he and his government created.
There you go, Pierre. How do you like them apples?
Prime Minister has doubled rent, doubled mortgage payments, and now his plan is a $4 billion program that 2 years in has not built a single solitary home, and he wants to target tax benefits for the construction of $10 million penthouse apartments. Will they instead reverse their inflationary spending so we can bring down interest rates and let Canadians keep their homes? Hear, hear.
Mr. Speaker, you want to talk about housing program delivery. When he was the minister, he had $300 million go towards the building of only 99 homes over years, Mr. Speaker. We're continuing to roll out programs that are literally changing the ways that cities build homes. We have helped build or repair nearly 500,000 homes through the National Housing Strategy, which his party voted against. He's now opposing measures that's going to make it cheaper to build the homes that Canadians need. We're going to get it done by continuing to incentivize home building, supporting the people who are going to put roofs over the heads of our neighbors. It's the right thing to do. It's a shame that he opposes it.
Speaker, after 8 years, the National Housing Strategy of which he speaks has doubled housing costs. It doubled the cost of mortgages, rent, and down payments. And yes, it costs many billions more than what we spent when we were in government, but we delivered housing that was half the cost of what it is today. Now on to restaurants. Today we learned that 1/3 of restaurants are losing money. That leaves them three choices: shut down, cut wages, or raise prices on Canadians. Will the government reverse the carbon taxes and the inflationary increases to interest rates that are forcing our restaurants to go under and costing waitresses and servers their jobs?
Government doesn't care, man. That's why didn't they just launch a UBI? Universal Basic Income.
Mr. Speaker, as a former small business owner myself, I know that small businesses are the backbone of these communities. And as a small business owner, I'm glad the Conservatives are not in charge. Small businesses wouldn't be saving $1 billion in credit card transaction fees. Women entrepreneurs would not have $7 billion of investment through our women entrepreneurship strategy, nor the $10 day childcare that has put more women into the workforce. Conservatives have been voting against these efforts to support small businesses, including women entrepreneurs, and they are not worth the risk.
Bravo.
Did she just assume that it's only women that work in childcare? That's quite sexist.
Israeli families have lived with the pain of loved ones either killed or still held hostage. In the last 2 weeks, the situation in Gaza has grown dire. Humanitarian aid is trickling in. Thousands have been killed, many children. Diverse voices are calling for a ceasefire, including the head of the UN, Canadian aid agencies, and even some Liberal MPs. Will the Prime Minister join the NDP's call for a ceasefire now?
I'm sure that the terrorist group will listen to a ceasefire, Jagmeet. I think we're all on board with that.
The humanitarian situation in Gaza was dire before these last weeks. We are doing everything that we can to support Canadians on the ground. We're also committed to working diplomatically to prevent the conflict from spreading. We're working with our allies to ensure the protection of all Israeli and Palestinian civilians. We're calling and have been consistently calling on international humanitarian law to be respected. We were the first government to move to provide substantial humanitarian aid to both Israeli and Palestinian civilians, and we will continue our efforts in that regard.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this Liberal NDP government, nearly half of all Canadians with a mortgage say that they're having a tough time paying it. The Prime Minister told us the interest rates would stay low forever, but his reckless spending and higher taxes have caused rates to skyrocket faster than ever. Now struggling families are paying the price. Young people can't even imagine getting in. There is a mortgage crisis on the horizon until this Prime Minister reins it in. When will he stop the inflationary deficits and balance the budget so that Canadians can keep their homes?
Mr. Speaker, when I hear the Conservatives make arguments that we should be spending less in the context of housing, I would point out to them that it takes investments to build the housing necessary to put a roof over the same Canadians' heads that she seems concerned about. In this regard, Mr. Speaker, we're cutting the tax on new apartment construction in this country. They want to put it back on. We are moving forward with a plan to fund cities so they build more homes. They plan to cut it. When we put measures on the floor of the House of Commons to support some of society's most vulnerable, they vote against it. Every step of the way they try to block progress for people. We're going to advance it at all costs.
The only thing Liberals are doing is putting us in a deficit.
That's false, Mr. Speaker. They act like everything's okay. They haven't built a single home with their accelerator fund. But the number of people who are paying their mortgage, the number of people who say that they're paying their mortgage is very difficult, has doubled in 6 months. And as mortgage payments and anxiety go up, Canadians cut back on essentials like food and home heating. Mr. Speaker, you shouldn't have to choose between heating your home and putting food on the table. But that's the reality after 8 years of this Prime Minister.
Yeah.
Canadians are realizing that he's not worth the cost. Will this minister finally realize that too?
Mr. Speaker, part of the reasons it's difficult to find affordable housing in this country is because for 30 years, federal governments in Canada failed to make the investments necessary, including the previous Conservative government. When they were last in power, Mr. Speaker, this country lost 800,000 homes that were on the market at affordable prices. We're going to continue to make the investments necessary to get more homes built. I would ask the honourable member in response to her question why she wants to raise taxes on home building and cut funding for home builders. Mr. Speaker, we need to make the investments necessary to build homes in this country, and that is exactly what we're going to do.
People agree that we do need to make better investments into homes. Liberals are not the ones to do that.
Even those who are not sitting in their normal seats to please listen.
Oh, he's power tripping again.
They'll be able to ask the questions. The honourable member from Simcoe North.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this Liberal NDP government, spending is out of control and inflationary deficit are pushing up mortgage costs. The Parliamentary Budget Officer says the deficit this year will increase to over $46 billion. And everyone now agrees that spending is driving interest rates. Right. Every month, 70,000 households are renewing their mortgage, and they're realizing that this Prime Minister is not worth the cost. So will they rein in inflationary deficits, put forth a plan to balance the budget so Canadians can keep their homes?
Mr. Speaker, I can speak to the fact that Canada has created over 1 million more jobs compared to pre-pandemic levels, has the lowest debt to GDP ratio and the lowest deficit in the G7, lower inflation than our comparative partners around the world, and the IMF and OECD project the strongest growth in 2024. We know that Canadians are struggling right now, but the real difference between us and the Conservatives, Mr. Speaker, is that our government will not abandon people in need, like the Conservative leader has made abundantly clear time and time again.
Didn't Sean Fraser lose a literal 1 million people?
L'honorable député de Simcoe Nord.
Mr. Speaker, maybe the government hasn't got the memo. Nobody cares about meaningless G7 comparative statistics. After 8 years of prolific spending, the bills are finally coming due. The government borrowing is driving interest rates. This year, the government has to borrow $421 billion. Next year, the government has to borrow over $350 billion. That pushes up mortgage costs for everybody. So once again, will they acknowledge that they need to rein in their spending, produce a plan to balance the budget so that Canadians can keep their homes?
It's good that now they're saying nobody cares about G7 comparison. That's a huge talking point for the Liberals.
L'honorable ministre.
Mr. Speaker, I will share with you what Canadians and Albertans care about, and that is the Canada Pension Plan. And Mr. Speaker, after 3 weeks of silence on behalf of the Conservative leader, finally a comment on Danielle Smith's idea to take Albertans out of the CPP, a weak, timid response at that. And guess what, Mr. Speaker? 30 MPs from Alberta, Conservatives, every one of them, silent on the issue. Why, Mr. Speaker? Because they talk a big game in this House, but when it comes to defending Albertans and Canadians, they're silent. We're on the task. We're going to defend Albertans and the CPP.
Mr. Speaker, the RCMP ended the SNC investigation due to this Prime Minister's refusal to gain access to cabinet documents. It doesn't stop there. During my recent inquiry with the Auditor General, the NDP Liberal Cover-Up Coalition adjourned the meeting, leaving crucial questions unanswered. Over the last 8 years, this Prime Minister has spent years concealing his role in the SNC scandal. He is not worth the cost. When will he finally produce the documents as requested by the RCMP?
I want to remind all members, please, to refrain from using mock names. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the RCMP have confirmed, there is no active investigation. The case was fully looked into and is now closed. And as the member opposite knows, all RCMP operations are taken independently.
Hear, hear.
L'honorable député de Brantford-Brant.
Mr. Speaker, that response is the opposite definition of transparency and accountability. In 2019, after being found guilty of breaching the Conflict of Interest Act, the Prime Minister claimed he took full responsibility for his mistakes. Yet here we are after 5 years, and the RCMP confirms that the Prime Minister refused to release all the documents as requested. Canadians have questions, and unlike this NDP Liberal Cover-Up Coalition, Conservatives want answers. What is he hiding?
Yeah.
Before we do go to the Honourable Minister, I do want to remind all Honourable members once again to please refrain from using mock titles.
Yeah, we get it, Speaker. You feel power hungry.
We have a point of order.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. Earlier in question period, twice you referenced a mock title that members are not supposed to use. And I know a number of us are confused as to what that may be. So I'm wondering if the Speaker could clarify what that term is so that we cannot make that same mistake again going forward.
I thank the honourable member from South Shore St. Margaret's for that. The term that was being referenced, I will get back to the honourable member from Brantford-Brant, as well as to the member from South Shore St. Margaret's on this shortly. And
give us the answer now.
At that time.
Wow. Thanks so much for making it to the end of the video. If you want to support the channel financially, you can do so by checking out the merch shop linked right up there. Or if you want to do something for free, which is also absolutely acceptable and highly encouraged, you can subscribe right there. If you want to continue watching videos like this, you can do so by clicking or tapping right there to watch the next upcoming video. And if you want to watch a little bit of different content, but also Canadian stuff, you can do so by clicking right up there. That's my second channel, House of Canada, also known as the House of Commons Highlights. Thank you so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.